Obviously, practice 2, if you can tell, it's a non-padded practice, but there's not much of any difference. And I think more than anything for me, the spirit is what I want to see, you know, and our ability to kind of play to the edge and guys to push each other and compete. Really, I think the competitive spirit, the one thing we talked about shaking things up since we came back from our last game, was really kind of that competitive spirit of there's new guys that come into the program, right? There's 8 transfers, there's 11 freshman kids that are in the mix now, and they need an opportunity, you know. And in some ways, some guys would say, well, you know, Jake Chaney's played a lot of ball, but that's what's going to make Jake Chaney better. And I think right now, I know it's only 2 practices, but everybody's embraced that. There's a lot of guys rolling through, getting a lot of opportunities, creating that competitiveness, and that's what you're seeing. I think you're going to see a lot more competitiveness O against D. I think the edges of our defense are going to be a little bit different, which is going to challenge the edges of our offense. And I think that, to me, is what stands out right now just in 2 practices, is that natural competitiveness that's going to make us better in the long run. And we got to keep it up. I know it's day 2. We've got to keep that energy up. We've got to keep that ability to keep pushing and create that competitiveness.
You bring in a guy like Tyler, obviously experienced quarterback at the college level. What have you learned about him in the last few months in terms of how he approaches preparing for practice, preparing, you know, for workouts, stuff like that?
The unique thing and the beautiful thing about some of those guys that are older, obviously they've been through a lot, but when they walk in the door, their routines are pretty set, right? I mean, they don't have as much, I'm not saying they don't have schoolwork, but you know, they have some more things in the graduate program that's a little bit more, you know, in a routine that they can do it. They aren't away for a lot of class time, so there are opportunities to spend an enormous amount of time learning and within the system gives those great guys a great opportunity. To be honest with you, I want to see him kind of continue to come out of his shell. We had a great example of what Tanner did last year, but you know, he's in a battle as well. So I think that for him, learning the offense and repping and working with a guy that's been in the offense that knows it like the back of his hand in Braden, I think that makes it a little bit more, you know, put a little bit more pressure on him, but I think he's done a great job. We're going to continue, I think we're going to continue to see him kind of come out of his shell, and not just as a football player, but as a leader as well.
Is Chad's going to be able to do more this spring than you initially thought before spring started?
Yeah. And in a lot of ways, you know, I thought maybe we would hold him in a lot of situations, but I don't know if that's the best thing for Ches, and I don't know if that's the best thing for us. You know, I mean, and that's not what Ches wants. So I think that the opportunity for him to go out there and compete and show what it is that he can do, you know, we're going to be smart. You know, there's not a guy that's, you know, in his 5th or 6th year that needs, you know, 1,000,000 reps, but he needs the reps, he needs the shots, he needs the ability to get the confidence back and everything, carrying the football and making plays.
Finishing was a big conversation all of last offseason, and all the time you hammered home. Slow starts kind of were something that hurt you guys last season. Is that something you can incorporate into the offseason as well, or how do you kind of approach that?
Yeah, I mean, we talked about it, started today. I mean, there's the first 15 minutes of practice that are what I would say is still an extension of our meetings, right? It's a pre-practice little jog through, it's a pre-practice run through, it's a special teams kind of, you know, jog through, and then we go to the difference, which is right after stretch, and it's 1 minute of a competitiveness against each other, and that's kind of the idea that, hey, we just warmed up, whether it's like a game or not, and then from here on out, the next hour and 45 minutes better be the competitive nature that we want to see. And so it's more of an emphasis that once we hit that situation right there, we do the difference, we fight for the inside position and blow delivery, block destruction. From then on, it's like everything's got to start. And we can't see guys kind of slowly progress. Now, does that mean that they're going to start the game fast? I think that's a part of us as coaches as well. The confidence we have in each other, of knowing what we've got a little bit better, and hopefully in year 2, we'll see a lot better initial stats.
We've got some freshman offensive linemen here already. Some guys are going to be.
Wish we had others.
Yeah, I was going to ask about that. I'm sure you want to see them grow quickly. How difficult is it at that position for a young guy to come in and contribute?
Well, some of those guys are running with the 2s. It's really difficult. But I think that these guys that choose to come in at this time understand that there's some things that are going to be thrown upon their plate that they're going to have to embrace, and that's going against some guys that have played a lot of ball in college, and they have to understand why they're doing things, and they've done a great job. I think for us to get better, and I mean as a whole program, we have to be able to rep 3 groups this spring. without having some of those guys, it makes it really difficult. How do you get enough reps for the third quarterback or the second quarterback or the guys that are competing or that next tailback or those guys that you're going to expect hopefully to be able to contribute, whether it's this year or in the future. So it's very critical to try to get some of those guys in early and then baptism by fire.
Look, there's been a couple recent decommitments in the next recruiting class. Obviously, every situation is different, but is this just what high school recruiting is these days, or is there anything you feel like you guys could do different?
No, it's unfortunately a little bit of what high school is right now. I think there's a lot of ups and downs and not understanding, right? Is everything happening faster? So guys commit earlier, and then all of a sudden they recognize that maybe there's something else out there. I think it comes down to guidance. But you can't you ride the wave like I do sometimes of every single up and down and what a 17-year-old is doing, then it can cause you a lot of sleepless nights. But I know this, that we'll end up with the right ones. And as we've seen, obviously even last year, sometimes there's a wave of that stuff. But just got to keep pushing forward.
Coach, you talked about the edges being different. What have you especially seen from guys like John and
Well, they bring a different competitiveness to us, right? I think the first and second steps are going to be a little bit different, and that's a great challenge to Jack and to Riley and to the rest of those guys on the edges, and even the tight ends. And I think that's where the challenge, as we looked at last year and tried to break it down, is we have to do a lot better job on both sides of the ball, right? We've got to be dominant on the edges on our offense. Those are the guys that we put a lot on. And for us to be a great football team, those guys have got to be great. And for us to be a great defense, our edges have got to be really, really good. And where we were consistent in some ways last year, I don't know that we made enough plays and created enough havoc from those edges, and that's what we've got to be able to do.
He's not a new person by any stretch, but Aaron Witt actually being developed out here in practice. What stands out about him so far?
He's a competitive spirit. I think more than anything, it's great. We got him back a little bit at the end of the year last year. I think maybe for the last game, where he was just able to go in and maybe on a pump block situation. But I don't think he had practiced. He had said in like 500, 600 some days. And so to see him back out here, he gives that whole group a lift. He creates obviously some competition and some more numbers. But there's a physicality that comes with what he does and an intensity that comes with what he does that we need, and I think in some ways we missed a little bit last year.
You mentioned the third quarterback and the importance of trying to get that guy some reps. How do you think Nick has approached this offseason and trying to take that step forward they needed to make from last year?
He's grown up. He's done a really good job. He's had to battle through the young guy stuff when they walk in the door. He's had to battle through learning the system and not getting the opportunities, which, as we all know today, is the most difficult thing, right? You always have other people in your ear, and you don't get the opportunities to go out there and play. It's hard. It's hard on everybody. It's hard on a quarterback. It's hard on every position, and that one in particular. So he's come a long way. I think he's got some reps with the twos in here a little bit today, and giving some more opportunities to create that competition. And we got to figure out what those guys can do. All of them. To be honest with you, there's not one guy you'd say is a 1, 2, or a 3. We've got to find ways to get Mayberry, who came in here with a lot of reps as well.
Inside linebacker is a position you guys have a lot of talent. What have you kind of just seen from the group as a collective this year?
If I would say there's probably the biggest difference in one group, it might be there. Length, just some athleticism, some competitiveness now that you have 5 guys or so, 6 guys in the mix trying to battle for 2. There'll be some opportunities. We'll have 3 of those guys on the field. I think that's where, I think we felt like that was what the shakeup needed to be in a lot of ways. It's nothing against older guys, nothing against a guy like Jake Chaney, but if you don't want the competition, then you do see guys that maybe this isn't the right place. And I think that that's a spot in particular that looks as different as any other spot. But that being said, Jake Chaney is still a leader of the group. He's done an unbelievable job at embracing that, bringing those guys in, and kind of being the guy that kind of promotes the competition. So I feel like we're in a really good place there and with his leadership.
Is that a hard position to rotate at just because of the communication aspect of that spot, or do you just have to trust multiple guys can pick that up?
It is. It just depends, right? When there's a discrepancy between your one and your next guy, then it's really hard to roll. If there's not as big a discrepancy between your one and the next guy, then surely it's not as hard to roll. And I used to say it's like the quarterback, but I don't know that it is. If you've got two guys that can lead and do what we need them to do, in the long run, we'll be a lot better, right? If you've got a guy that plays 90% of the snaps or 95% of the snaps, it's really difficult in the game today. And, so, I know Joe Thomas is different. He played every snap. There's not many, or will ever be Joe Thomases. But I also think in college, when you're averaging 78 snaps a game, that's different in a lot of ways. And for us to be best, if we can't play 22 guys on defense, we're struggling.
So with guys like at the inside linebacker position, with Tackett as a naturally had some familiarity with the program, with the media staff, how much do you think that helped lure them? Was it because of having some familiarity?
I don't know. I mean, to be honest with you, new is new. Whether you've got some familiarity with the campus or, where things are, I think new is new. And I think maybe the most unique thing for Tackett is he did have some relationships, maybe an Aaron Witt or somebody they knew before, but things are all different. I mean, the relationship you have in recruiting and then the relationship you have when you start competing and battling with guys, it's far different. But those guys have done a great job. They've battled through, Tackett's battled through some injuries as he's been in here and some surgery. But as you're starting to see now, there's a natural competitive nature that I think we've created a little bit more for this spring, and we'll see.
RJ Delancey is a guy who's seen a lot of reps right there in the boundary position. What have you kind of seen from him at that spot? And is that where you kind of envision him maybe down the line?
We'll see. I mean, that's where he's playing. That's where we've kind of, given him an opportunity to compete and play over there with Nizier and Amari Snowden and some guys. But there's some mixture that'll start to happen. I think he's done a really good job at, in some ways, getting back into the routine and putting himself in a situation where he walked in the door maybe at 178 pounds and now he's 192. And I think sometimes when guys make changes, there's a focus to what it is that they're doing. They recognize the opportunity that's in front of them and how small that window is, and they're trying to take advantage of that opportunity. And he's done a great job, but we'll be able to mix around because a guy like Max Lothry that didn't play at all last year, has showed up and battled through a lot of injuries and is doing a really good job. And he might not be playing at that position, but gives us some flexibility to try to see who's going to be the best 11 and who's going to be the best 22.
Jack McNeil's listed as the director of football relations now. What's kind of that position? What do you envision for that role?
I don't know a whole lot. It's not much of a role right now, and we'll see as we move forward if there's actually something that we can do that's a little bit more beneficial as a whole. But from afar, sometimes that's a little bit harder to do. But I'm trying to figure that out.
Talk about competitiveness. Saw some dust-ups here. Are you okay with those?
This is like a few good men, right? On the record, I tell you no, I don't. I don't condone those things. But off the record, I would. You know what? As I said, to be able to play at the edge is really important. And what we need to understand is when a guy goes over the edge, that there can't be things that escalate. And I think it's a great learning lesson to say, when your buddy loses his mind, your job is to grab the guy. As you know in a game, if you grab the other team, it's a penalty. It's the same thing in practice. You're learning the situations where guys are going to lose their emotion at some point in time, and if they've got their buddies around them, they can grab them and control them. I think it's a really healthy thing. If things escalate, if things get out of control where you can't practice and guys lose their minds, I don't think it's a good thing. But I think if you can't push these guys and make sure they understand that there's an edge that you have to play with, it's going to be difficult for us to be the type of team. All right, thank you.